The platinum ring slipped from Owen Novak's fingers at the worst possible moment, tumbling through the wooden slats of the pier and disappearing into the dark water below with a tiny splash that felt catastrophically loud in his ears. He stood frozen, staring at the gap between the boards where his grandmother's engagement ring had just vanished. Not just any ring. The ring he'd driven 3 hours to his mother's house to retrieve. The ring 4 generations of Novak women had worn. The ring he'd planned to give to someone who, as of this morning, was no longer speaking to him. No, no, no. Owen dropped to his knees, pressing his face against the weathered boards, trying to see into the murky water below. The December sun was already setting, and even in the fading light he could tell the water was too dark, too deep, too hopeless. A woman's voice cut through his panic. "Did you drop something?" Owen looked up to find a young woman standing a few feet away, concern etched across her features. She had curly auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore paint-splattered overalls over a thick sweater. She was holding an easel under one arm and a canvas bag in the other. "An engagement ring," he said, the words hollow. "My grandmother's engagement ring." It just fell through the boards. The woman set down her supplies immediately and knelt beside him, peering through the slats. How long ago? 30 seconds, maybe less. Then it might not have sunk yet. The tide's going out, so it could have caught on something. She was already pulling off her heavy sweater. "I'm Bella Emerson. I'm a marine biology instructor at the aquarium. I dive here sometimes." "You can't go in there. The water's freezing. It's December." Bella was unlacing her boots. "I've been in colder. Do you want the ring back or not?" Owen stared at her. "You don't even know me." "I know you just lost something important." She stripped down to a wetsuit that she'd apparently been wearing under her clothes. "I was painting the sunset, but this is more interesting. Where exactly were you standing?" He pointed and she studied the angle, the current, the position of the pier supports. "Stay here. If I come up somewhere else, I need you to see where." Before he could protest further, she'd climbed over the railing and dropped into the water with barely a splash. Owen rushed to the edge, his heart pounding for entirely new reasons now. What kind of person just jumped into freezing ocean water for a stranger? The seconds stretched impossibly long. He counted to 60, then 90. At 2 minutes, real fear set in. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, her head broke the surface. "I found something," she called out, her voice breathless. "There's a gap in the rocks. I need to go back down." "No, just come up. It's not worth it." She ignored him and disappeared again. This time she was down for even longer. Owen was about to call for help when she surfaced, gasping, her fist raised triumphantly above the water. "Got it." Getting her back onto the pier took some maneuvering, but within minutes, she was standing in front of him, dripping wet and shivering, holding out a platinum ring with an emerald-cut diamond that caught the last rays of sunlight. Oh my God. Owen took the ring with shaking hands. "I can't believe you did that. Told you it might have caught on something." Her teeth were chattering. "There's a whole ecosystem under there, pretty fascinating actually." He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You're insane, thank you, I mean it, thank you." "You're welcome," she smiled, and Owen felt something shift in his chest. "So, when's the wedding?" The question hit like cold water. "There isn't going to be one. My girlfriend broke up with me this morning. I was holding the ring because I just picked it up from my mother's house. I was looking at it, thinking about what an idiot I'd been, and it just slipped." Bella's expression softened. "I'm sorry, that's rough. 3 years gone. She said I prioritized work over her. She wasn't wrong." He realized he was still holding his coat around her shoulders, standing too close. He stepped back. "Let me buy you dinner at least. You must be freezing. There's got to be somewhere nearby where you can warm up. There's a diner 2 blocks up that makes excellent clam chowder. Then that's where we're going. I'm Owen by way of introduction. Nice to meet you, Owen." Even under strange circumstances. At the diner, Bella excused herself to change in the bathroom, emerging in dry clothes from her canvas bag. When she slid into the booth across from him, her hair was damp but no longer dripping, and her cheeks were flushed from the hot water she'd splashed on her face. Owen had ordered 2 bowls of clam chowder, coffee, and pretty much every warm item on the menu. "You didn't have to order the entire kitchen," she said, but she was smiling. "You jumped into the ocean in December for a stranger. It's the least I can do." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Bella asked, "So what do you do when you're not dropping heirloom jewelry into the ocean?" "I run a hotel chain. Novak Luxury Hotels. My grandfather started with 1 property, and now we have 43 locations across the country." He waited for the usual reaction. The impressed look, the calculating interest, the subtle shift in body language. Instead, Bella nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like a lot of responsibility. Is that what led to the breakup?" Her directness caught him off guard. "Partly. I travel constantly. I'm always on my phone. I missed important things. Her sister's wedding because I had to handle a crisis in Chicago. Her birthday because I was touring a potential acquisition in Miami. She kept forgiving me and I kept disappointing her. Did you love her?" The question should have felt intrusive, but somehow it didn't. "I thought I did. But looking back, I think I loved the idea of her. She fit into my life perfectly, at least the life I thought I was supposed to have, but I never really put her first, not the way she deserved." Bella took a sip of her coffee. "At least you can recognize that. Some people never do. What about you? Marine biology instructor who carries a wetsuit and painting supplies. That's not a combination I expected." "The ocean is my first love," she said simply. "I teach kids about marine life during the week and I paint on weekends. It doesn't pay much, but I can't imagine doing anything else." "Do you sell your paintings?" "Sometimes. There's a gallery in town that takes a few on consignment. Mostly I paint because I love it. Because the way light hits the water at sunset makes me feel alive. Because a school of fish moving together looks like a dance. Because there's an entire world under the surface that most people never see." She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. "Sorry, I get carried away. Don't apologize." "It's refreshing. Most people I know only talk about profit margins and market share." They talked for 2 hours, long after the food was gone and the coffee had been refilled 3 times. Owen learned that Bella had grown up in a small coastal town in Maine, that she'd studied marine biology at Boston University, that she'd turned down a high-paying research position to take the teaching job because she loved working with kids. She learned that Owen had inherited the hotel business when his father died 5 years ago, that he'd never wanted to run it, but felt obligated to honor his family's legacy, that he couldn't remember the last time he'd taken a vacation. When they finally left the diner, the sky was fully dark, stars scattered across the black canvas above them. "Thank you for dinner," Bella said, "and for letting me hear the story behind the ring. I'm glad I could help." Owen didn't want her to leave. The realization startled him. He'd known this woman for 3 hours, and the thought of not seeing her again felt wrong. "Can I get your number?" he asked. "I'd like to thank you properly. Maybe take you to dinner somewhere that doesn't serve everything in bowls." She hesitated, and he could see her weighing the decision. "You just got out of a 3-year relationship this morning. I know, and you're right to be cautious. But I'd really like to see you again. No pressure, just dinner or coffee, or I could come watch you paint, whatever you're comfortable with." Bella studied his face for a long moment, then smiled. "Okay, but I'm picking the place and it's going to be nowhere fancy. I don't do fancy." "Deal." They exchanged numbers, and Owen watched her walk to her car, canvas bag slung over her shoulder, easel under her arm. He looked down at the ring in his palm, the metal still cold from the ocean water, and wondered if losing it had been the luckiest mistake of his life. 3 days later, Owen met Bella at a taco truck near the beach. She was already there, sitting at a picnic table, sketching something in a small notebook. "What are you drawing?" he asked, sliding onto the bench across from her. She turned the notebook to show him. It was a detailed drawing of a sea turtle, so lifelike it seemed ready to swim off the page. "We have a turtle at the aquarium who was injured by a boat propeller. She's recovering, but she'll never be able to return to the wild. I sketch her sometimes. That's beautiful. They ordered tacos and ate while watching the waves crash against the shore. The conversation flowed as easily as it had at the diner, moving from childhood memories to favorite books to the places they dreamed of visiting. I've been to dozens of countries, Owen admitted, but always for work. I've seen the inside of more conference rooms than tourist attractions. I've been to Paris 3 times and never seen the Eiffel Tower. That's tragic. What about you? Where do you want to go? The Great Barrier Reef before it's gone, the Galapagos Islands, Antarctica, anywhere with incredible marine life. Her eyes lit up as she talked. But honestly, there's so much beauty right here. Sometimes I think people are so busy chasing exotic destinations that they miss what's in their own backyard. Owen found himself smiling. You're very grounded. It's nice. You say that like it's rare. In my world, it is. They met again 2 days after that, and then 3 days after that. Each time, Owen felt himself relaxing in ways he didn't know he needed. With Bella, he didn't have to be the CEO of a luxury hotel chain. He didn't have to be constantly achieving, constantly performing. He could just be himself. On their 4th meeting, Bella took him to the aquarium after hours. She had keys, and the place was empty except for the soft sounds of water filtering systems and the occasional splash. "This is my favorite time to be here," she said, leading him through the darkened halls. "During the day, it's loud and crowded, but at night it's peaceful. You can actually hear the ocean sounds." She stopped in front of a massive tank filled with fish of every color imaginable. In the dim blue light, her face looked ethereal. "That's Shelley," she said, pointing to a sea turtle swimming lazily past the glass. "The one I draw. Isn't she gorgeous?" Owen watched the turtle glide through the water, its movements graceful despite the scarring on its shell. But mostly he watched Bella. The way her whole face softened when she looked at the turtle. The way she pressed her hand against the glass like she could somehow connect with the creature through the barrier. "She is," he agreed, though he wasn't looking at the turtle anymore. Bella turned and caught him staring. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Owen closed the distance between them and kissed her. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "I wasn't expecting that," she said softly. "Sorry, I should have asked first." "Don't apologize. I've been wanting you to do that since the 2nd time we met." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you needed time, and I needed to make sure this was real." Owen cupped her face in his hands. "It's real. You're the most real thing that's happened to me in years." They stood there in the blue light, surrounded by silent swimming fish, and kissed again. Over the next few weeks, Owen found himself rearranging his schedule in ways he never had before. He delegated more. He turned off his phone during dinners. He flew back early from a business trip to Seattle because Bella had invited him to watch her teach a class at the aquarium. Watching her with the kids was a revelation. She was patient and enthusiastic, making even the smallest hermit crab seem fascinating. The children hung on her every word, and Owen could see why. She had a gift for making learning feel like adventure. After the class, one little girl tugged on Bella's sleeve. "Miss Emerson, are you a princess?" Bella laughed. "Why would you think that?" "Because you're really pretty and you're nice and you know how to talk to animals." "I can't really talk to them, sweetie. I just watch them very carefully and learn their behaviors." The girl considered this. "That's even better than being a princess." Owen agreed completely. That night, over dinner at Bella's tiny apartment, she cooked pasta while he sat at her small kitchen table and told her about his day. It was such a domestic scene, so different from the sterile perfection of his penthouse downtown. "Your place is nice," he said, looking around at the mismatched furniture, the paintings covering every wall, the jar of sea glass on the windowsill. "It's small and kind of falling apart, but it's mine." She drained the pasta and brought it to the table. "I know it's not what you're used to." "It's better. It feels like a home." She sat down across from him. "Owen, can I ask you something? Anything?" Are you happy? With your life, with the hotels, with all of it? The question caught him off guard. No one had ever asked him that. They asked if the business was successful, if revenues were up, if he was planning to expand. But no one asked if he was happy. Honestly, no, I'm not. I haven't been for a long time. I just didn't realize it until I met you. Bella reached across the table and took his hand. Then what are you going to do about it? It was such a simple question, but it landed with the force of a revelation. What was he going to do about it? That night, lying in Bella's bed with her curled against his chest, Owen stared at the ceiling and thought about his life. He thought about the hotels, the constant travel, the stress that had become so normal he'd forgotten what it felt like to be relaxed. He thought about his ex-girlfriend's accusations, about all the moments he'd missed because he was working, and he thought about Bella, about how she made him laugh, about how she listened when he talked, about how being with her felt like coming home after a long journey. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered into the darkness. She stirred, tilting her head up to look at him. "I'm falling in love with you too." They kissed, and for the first time in years, Owen felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next few months were a blur of happiness. Owen found himself splitting his time between his demanding work schedule and every possible moment with Bella. She introduced him to her world, taking him on early morning beach walks to watch sunrise over the ocean, teaching him to identify different species of birds, showing him the tide pools filled with tiny ecosystems. He took her to nice restaurants, though she always seemed more comfortable at the taco truck or the diner. He bought her art supplies and professional diving equipment, gifts she accepted with gratitude but always insisted she didn't need. "I don't need expensive things," she told him one evening when he presented her with a set of professional-grade oil paints. "I just need you." But there were challenges too. Owen's work didn't stop demanding his attention. There were late-night phone calls, emergency meetings, trips he couldn't postpone. Each time he saw a flicker of something in Bella's eyes. Not anger, but worry. "I'm not her," Bella said one night after Owen had to cancel dinner plans because of a crisis at the Houston property. "I'm not going to give you an ultimatum, but I need you to know that I can't be second place, not forever." "You're not second place." "Then prove it." The words stung because they were fair. He was making more of an effort than he ever had before, but was it enough? Could it ever be enough while he was trying to run a nationwide hotel chain? The answer came during a particularly brutal week in March. Owen was in Los Angeles, dealing with a potential acquisition that should have taken 3 days but stretched to 7. He missed Bella's birthday. He missed a dinner with her parents who had driven down from Maine specifically to meet him. He missed the opening of a small gallery show featuring her paintings. When he finally made it back, exhausted and filled with guilt, he found her at the beach where they'd first met. She was painting, her easel set up facing the pier, capturing the way evening light turned the wooden structure golden. "I'm sorry," he said, coming up behind her. "I'm so sorry, Bella, I know I messed up." She didn't stop painting. "Did you know that octopuses can change not just their color but their texture to match their environment? They can become practically invisible, blending into rocks and coral so completely that you'd swim right past them without noticing." Owen didn't know where she was going with this, so he waited. "Sometimes I feel like your work is an octopus," she continued. "Every time I think I can see it clearly, it changes, adapts, becomes something that takes up more space. And I'm trying to understand because I know it's important to you." "But Owen, I can't keep being the thing you fit in around the edges." "I know, you're right. Everything you're saying is right." She finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying earlier. I love you so much it scares me. But I can't do this if it's going to be like this forever." Owen made a decision in that moment, standing on the beach with the woman he loved telling him she couldn't keep living in the margins of his life. It was a decision he'd been circling around for months, too afraid to fully commit to it. But looking at Bella's face, seeing the pain he'd caused, he knew what he had to do. What if it wasn't like this forever? What if things changed? How? You own a hotel chain. That's not a responsibility you can just walk away from. No, but I can restructure it. I've been thinking about this for a while. My brother has always been interested in the business side. He's been running the European division for 3 years and he's good at it. Better than me, honestly. And I have a management team I trust. What if I stepped back? Not completely, but significantly. What if I became more of a consultant, handling the strategic vision but letting other people manage the day-to-day operations? Bella set down her paintbrush. Could you really do that? I think I have to, because you're right. I've been letting the business consume my life, and I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be my father, dying at 55 from a heart attack because he worked himself to death. I don't want to wake up at 60 and realize I spent my whole life in boardrooms and airports. He took her hands. I want to wake up next to you. I want to be here for the important things. I want to build a life that's actually worth living. Tears were running down her face now. Are you sure? I don't want you to resent me later. I could never resent you. You've shown me what's actually important. You've shown me who I want to be. She kissed him then, and it tasted like salt water and possibility. The next few months were chaotic. Owen began the process of restructuring the company, promoting his brother Marcus to CEO while he transitioned to chairman of the board. It meant he'd still be involved in major decisions, but the day-to-day management would fall to others. There were board meetings and legal documents and long conversations with family members who didn't understand why he'd want to step back from running the empire his grandfather had built. But through it all, Bella was there. She listened when he doubted himself. She reminded him why he was doing this when the pressure became too much. She celebrated with him when the transition finally went through. On a warm evening in June, exactly 8 months after their first meeting, Owen took Bella back to the pier. The same pier where he'd lost his grandmother's ring and found something infinitely more valuable. This feels nostalgic, Bella said, smiling as they walked along the weathered boards. Should I be prepared to jump in after more lost jewelry? Actually, I was thinking about lost jewelry. Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. Specifically about how losing that ring was the best thing that ever happened to me. Owen, what are you doing? He pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. Inside the box was his grandmother's ring, the platinum and diamond catching the sunset light just like it had that first day. Bella Emerson, you dove into freezing water for a stranger. You've shown me what it means to really live. You've made me laugh more in 8 months than I did in the previous 8 years. You've taught me that success isn't about how much you achieve, but about how much you love and are loved in return. His voice caught with emotion. I know we haven't been together that long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Will you marry me? Bella was crying, her hands pressed to her mouth. Yes, yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and she pulled him to his feet, kissing him while other people on the pier started to applaud. When they finally broke apart, both of them were laughing. I can't believe you're giving me your grandmother's ring, she said, looking down at it on her hand. It found its way to the right person eventually, just took a detour through the ocean first. They were married 4 months later in a small ceremony on the beach. Bella wore a simple dress and no shoes, and she walked down the aisle to the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Owen cried when he saw her, not caring who noticed. Marcus was his best man, and Bella's sister stood beside her as maid of honor. There were maybe 50 people there, mostly family and close friends, and it was perfect. During his vows, Owen said, "You saved more than a ring that day. You saved me." During her vows, Bella said, I dove into the ocean looking for lost treasure. I found something infinitely more precious. They honeymooned in the Galapagos Islands, Bella's dream destination. Owen watched her swim with sea turtles and sea lions, her joy so radiant it made his chest ache. They hiked volcanic trails and watched blue-footed boobies perform their mating dance and fell asleep each night tangled together, happy and exhausted. When they returned, they moved into a house halfway between the aquarium and Owen's downtown office. It had a studio for Bella's painting, a home office for Owen, and a view of the ocean from the bedroom window. They adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Captain, who loved the beach almost as much as Bella did. Owen settled into his new role at the company, finding that he actually enjoyed the strategic planning more than the constant crisis management. He worked 3 days a week from home, attended board meetings once a month, and traveled only when absolutely necessary. The business continued to thrive under Marcus's leadership, and Owen felt only relief at being freed from the daily grind. Bella continued teaching at the aquarium and painting on weekends. A gallery in Los Angeles started representing her work, and she sold enough paintings to feel successful while still maintaining the career she loved. She never wanted to be a full-time artist, she explained to Owen. She loved working with the kids too much. On their first anniversary, Owen surprised her with a donation to the aquarium in her name, enough to fund a new rehabilitation facility for injured marine animals. Bella cried when she found out, then dragged him to the aquarium to show him the plans for where the facility would be built. "We can save so many more animals now," she said, her eyes shining. "Sea turtles, dolphins, seals, all of them. This is incredible." "You're incredible," he corrected. "I just have money. You're the one who actually makes a difference." 2 years after their wedding, Bella got pregnant. They'd been trying for 6 months, and when the test came back positive, they both sat on the bathroom floor and cried happy tears. Owen called Marcus to tell him he'd need to handle the quarterly board meeting solo, because Owen was going to be busy preparing to be a father. Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in September. They named her Marina after the sea that had brought them together. She had Bella's auburn hair and Owen's blue eyes, and from the moment Owen held her, he understood what his father must have felt, what his grandfather must have felt, that overwhelming desire to provide and protect and give this tiny person everything. But he also understood what he'd missed before. That providing didn't mean working yourself to death. That the best gift you could give your child was your presence, not your bank account. Marina grew up spending weekends at the beach, learning to identify shells and sea creatures before she could read. By the time she was 4, she could name a dozen species of fish and told anyone who would listen that she was going to be a marine biologist like her mommy when she grew up. Owen scaled back his involvement with the company even further, eventually transitioning to an advisory role that required only a few hours a week. He spent his days with his family, took Marina to preschool, cooked dinner while Bella taught evening classes, read bedtime stories about talking whales and adventurous octopuses. On their 5th anniversary, they went back to the pier. Marina was 3 years old, holding both their hands as they walked along the weathered boards. "Tell me the story again," Marina demanded. "About how you founded Daddy's ring." "Found," Bella corrected gently, "and I've told you 100 times. I want to hear it again." So Bella told the story, simplified for a 3-year-old's understanding, about how Daddy had lost something important and Mommy had been brave and jumped in the water to find it. Marina listened with wide eyes, even though she'd heard it many times before. "And then you got married?" Marina asked. "And then we got married," Owen confirmed, squeezing Bella's hand. "Because of the ring, because of what the ring led us to," Bella said. "Sometimes the things we lose help us find what we really need." Later, after Marina was asleep in her bedroom painted with murals of underwater scenes, Owen and Bella sat on their back porch, watching the stars reflect on the ocean. "Do you ever regret it?" Bella asked. "Stepping away from the company, you could have been so much more successful." Owen pulled her closer. "I am successful, I have you, I have Marina, I have a life I actually enjoy living. That's the only success that matters. Your grandfather probably wouldn't approve. Maybe not, but I think he'd understand eventually. He built the business for his family." "I just chose to define family differently." Bella rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you dropped that ring," Owen laughed. "Me too, best mistake I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the waves, thinking about how a single moment can change the trajectory of an entire life. How loss can lead to discovery. How sometimes you have to let something go to find what you really need. 3 years later, they had a son. They named him River, continuing the water theme. Marina was ecstatic to be a big sister and appointed herself his personal tour guide to all things ocean-related. By the time River was 2, she was teaching him to identify sand dollars and explaining the life cycle of sea turtles with the passionate certainty of a 6-year-old expert. Owen's life became a beautiful chaos of school pickups and soccer practice and family dinners. He coached Marina's soccer team, taught River to swim, helped Bella prepare for her classes. The Novak hotel chain continued to flourish under Marcus's leadership, and Owen attended board meetings 4 times a year, just enough to stay connected but not enough to consume his life. He never regretted his decision. Not once on their 10th anniversary, Owen and Bella renewed their vows on the same beach where they'd been married. Marina was 8, River was 5, and both children stood with them, part of the ceremony. This time, Owen's vows included thanking Bella not just for saving him, but for showing him what a life well lived actually looked like. "You taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars," he said, looking into her eyes. "It's measured in moments. In laughter and love and the joy of watching our children discover the world. You are my greatest treasure, and finding you was worth losing everything else." Bella's vows were simpler. "I dove into the ocean for a stranger's ring. I'd dive into the ocean for you every day for the rest of my life." They kissed while their children cheered and their friends applauded, and the waves provided the soundtrack. It was perfect. The years continued to unfold in a pattern of ordinary happiness. Marina went to middle school and decided she wanted to be an environmental lawyer to protect the oceans. River discovered a love of photography and spent hours taking pictures of tide pools and sunsets. Bella was promoted to head of education at the aquarium. Owen started a nonprofit focused on ocean conservation, combining his business acumen with his wife's passion. They traveled as a family, finally making it to the Great Barrier Reef, showing their children the wonders Bella had always dreamed of seeing. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and ordinary Tuesdays that were special simply because they were together. The ring, the one that had started everything, stayed on Bella's finger. Sometimes she'd look down at it and remember that cold December day when she jumped into the ocean for a stranger. She'd remember thinking he looked lost, devastated, and she'd wanted to help. She couldn't have known that helping him would lead to this. A life filled with love and purpose and the kind of happiness that makes you grateful for every moment. Owen kept a photo in his office, the only decoration in the simple space. It was from that first week they'd met, taken at the aquarium. Bella was pressed against the glass of the tank, her hand reaching toward Shelley the sea turtle, her face glowing with joy. Owen was beside her, but he wasn't looking at the turtle. He was looking at Bella with an expression of such open adoration that whoever had taken the photo, one of Bella's coworkers, had commented that she'd never seen someone so obviously in love. Sometimes Owen would look at that photo and think about alternate timelines. What if he hadn't gone to the pier that day? What if he'd held onto the ring more tightly? What if Bella had decided not to jump in? How many small moments had to align perfectly for them to find each other, but mostly he didn't think about the what-ifs, he thought about the what-is. The beautiful, chaotic, perfect reality of his life. A life that started the moment a ring slipped from his fingers and a brave, kind woman decided to help a stranger. On a warm evening in June, 20 years after the day they met, Owen and Bella returned to the pier one more time. Their children were grown now. Marina was in law school, already making a name for herself in environmental advocacy. River was a professional photographer whose ocean photography had been featured in National Geographic. Owen and Bella walked hand in hand along the weathered boards, older now but still deeply in love. "Remember when you were kneeling right here, looking so devastated?" Bella asked, stopping at the spot where it had all begun. I remember thinking my life was falling apart. And now? Owen pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Now I know it was actually coming together, I just didn't realize it yet. They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The same sunset Bella had been trying to paint 20 years ago before a stranger's crisis had interrupted her evening and changed both their lives forever. "Thank you," Owen whispered. "For what? For jumping in. For taking a chance on a stranger. For showing me what really matters." Bella squeezed his hand. "Thank you for dropping the ring." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the water, and walked back down the pier toward home, toward the life they'd built, toward the future they'd continue to create together, one precious moment at a time. The ring on Bella's finger caught the last rays of sunlight, the same way it had 2 decades ago when she'd surfaced from the cold water, triumphant and dripping, holding out her fist to a stranger who would become her everything. Sometimes the things we lose lead us to what we need to find. Sometimes a moment of crisis becomes the beginning of something beautiful. Sometimes jumping into cold water for someone you don't know turns out to be the bravest, best decision you'll ever make. And sometimes a millionaire loses an engagement ring and finds something infinitely more valuable. A future wife who teaches him that the richest life has nothing to do with money and everything to do with love.